Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Sagittarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for Leo season, or July, August 2026, whatever your timing paradigm is. I'm here for it and I am here for you, Saggies. I hope you are well. I'm using my Bulgarian deck, the 777, for you today. Oh, that's nice. Look at that, 6 of Wands at the bottom of the deck. So, things that I have to tell you. If the reading resonates with you and you would like to go deeper, there will be an extended available at the end that you can access via the description link below. There are links in there. The first one takes you to Selfie if you just want the standalone extended for this reading here. But if you want access to all of the extended content I make, which is a considerable amount, you might consider coming over to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, on the Circle platform. There you can get access to all of the extended for all of the signs for the month. You also get access to the weekly energy readings that happen every week, obviously, and they run anywhere between 45 to, unending periods of time, depending on how intense everything is. You can also come participate in the Deccan Walk, which is proving to be nothing short of life-changing for a lot of people. We're walking the sun through every 10 degrees of the sky, and it's extraordinary. And if you join at the higher tier, you can come participate in the live classes that we run over there on all sorts of topics, not just tarot. All things occult. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. But let's get stuck in for you, Saggy. So what we're going to do here, let's just talk about that for a second. First thing we're going to do is pull some cards and ask the most important question that we can ask in 2026, which is, where am I right now? And from there, somewhat inspired by the Deccan Walk, actually, we're going to be looking around all things that kind of encapsulate the 5, 6 and 7 of Wands, which are actually the minor arcana cards that correspond to Leo season. And we might talk about keywords like struggle and victory and courage when we're talking about those. So we're going to see where there is a hot problem, Sagittarius, that you're dealing with right now, and how you can best overcome it during this season. And then we'll close out with the second most important question you can ask yourself in 2026, which is simply, what is your next step? This is not the point for huge grand plans, not even thinking about what you're going to be doing in a year's time or 2 years' time. It's just simply, what is the next step? Because I do have to warn you, I do feel like Leo season is going to get very, very loud very, very quickly. So let's try and reduce the noise and increase the signal, right? So obviously in the extended we will expand on anything that comes out here, but let's start out with, where is Sagittarius right now, please? Whoa, we have the 8 of Pentacles. We also have the Page of Swords, and one more card please for Sagittarius. That's 2. Hang on. Okay, so we have the Devil and we have the Queen of Cups. We have the 10 of Wands at the bottom of the deck, and I do feel like, I'm getting goosebumps. I do feel like 2026 hasn't been terribly comfortable for Sagittarians. I mean, we've talked about chopping wood and carrying water an awful lot, and you've been doing a sterling job at that. The 8 of Pentacles tells us that this is the case, right? This is a card of delayed gratification, consistency, a real application of self to the things that are important. You might have found yourself sorting a lot of things out this year, for example. But there's something about the way that you have been doing things, the way that you have been fairly consistently being disciplined about matters of your own life, that is leading you to a point where you're starting to see things very differently. And this is just really subtle emergence of a different kind of thinking paradigm for you, Sagittarius. We can't ignore the fact that this is a Sagittarius card right here, the 10 of Wands at the bottom of the deck, which is a card that's usually associated with burden. And you really have worked hard this year, Sag, whether it's been engaged in physical labor or whether it is just the toil of keeping yourself disciplined on what you are doing. There's something about the way that these cards are showing up here that implies both the fact that this toil is coming to an end, That would be the Ten of Wands. But also that there's some illuminated thinking that is coming up around notions of things that are deeply emotional for you, deeply embedded for you, and how you may have been subject to a kind of internal restriction that you have not noticed up until this point. I mean, it could well be that the devil is actually speaking to emotional things that you have been slightly aware of, but you haven't really felt like you could go there because you didn't, I don't know, maybe you felt like you lacked the tools to investigate whatever this deeper part of you was. Or maybe it was because the perspective that you held on it, that there was something about it that made you intrinsically bad or not good enough or whatever, was something that we kind of wanted to pivot away from rather than facing head on. I want to put some clarifiers here because I think that this is really important. Oh, shit. So tell me about this Page of Swords, please. So we've got the Four of Wands showing up on its side, and we've also got the Chariot. Now, the Four of Wands, interestingly enough, is an Aries card, and it is the very last card in the series of the Wand suit before we get to the Five of Wands, which is a Leo card from there, right? So 2, 3, 4 of Wands are Aries, and then 5, 6, 7 are Leo. And you'll notice that it's on its side. And what we've got here in terms of the contemplation of stuff is that almost like a recognition of some part of your emotional foundation. I'm not talking about really obvious trauma. I want to be clear about that. I'm not talking about really obvious trauma. I'm talking about underlying mechanisms are starting to reveal themselves to show you where your foundation has not been anywhere near as solid as you thought it was, even after the work that you have done, particularly if there was trauma involved there, right? So if you had a difficult childhood or something like that. But I love the fact that this Chariot is showing up here, because the Chariot is one of those cards that denotes victory and success, right? I mean strictly, it actually represents the conditions that allow for victory and success, because we are very determined. We are traveling in a particular direction, armed with a knowledge of self that we did not have before. It feels like whilst you've been engaged in this chopping wood and carrying water, or, you know, chopping wood and carrying wood, perhaps, well, you've been really knuckling down to the things that are important. Just noticed a big blister on my hand there. It's created space for some sort of deeper processing to occur. There's a deeper connection of self that has emerged from this time that I feel is empowering you to look at this. Now, for some of you, it could be as quite straightforward as the relationship with your mother, right? There's nothing even remotely straightforward about one's relationship with one's mother, right? But taking a step back from the obvious emotional connections, what you have to recognize about the relationship with your mother, whether it was good or whether it was bad, is that this created the model for relationships that has come thereafter for all the decades of your life. Now, like I said, some of you may have had maternal related trauma, and you may well have done a lot of work with that. But it's the sense that that work hasn't been quite as completed as you thought it was. And there are certain things that felt too confrontational before that now you seem to be able to look at in a way that you couldn't. I mean, the Chariot is a beautiful card, but it's incredibly complex, and it really does deal with that awareness of self and all the polarities of self. We all want to be the hero in our own story, but quite often in doing so, we create a shadow that is so vast, for it must, to hold up that hero archetype in balance, that we can end up doing things that take us away from what is aligned and solid and true. And I feel like it's almost like a sort of involuntary shadow work that's been going on, where you've noticed things And maybe you've had people telling you things, or maybe you've just paid attention to certain situations or feelings that have come up in a way that you wouldn't do before, that has shown you that this foundation, like, you're done with it. It doesn't hold the same level of fear that it used to, which is really intriguing. Because the devil is the epitome of the energy of fear, right? But we have the Emperor at the bottom of the deck, and there is a desire for self-control. There's a desire for self-discipline that we see in both of these cards, but we also see it over here, to allow something softer to come up. Now, this is not to say that all Sagittarians are going to lose their edgy bit. You can't. That's just part of who you are. But there is something softer underneath that is wanting to come out. And I think what's starting to happen at this point is you are realizing how it could never have done that fully, because this foundation was compromised, right? The model that was shown to you, and it doesn't have to be your mother, right? It could be, you know, your grandparents, your whoever. It's that soft, squidgy bit of Sagittarius that was so capable of being harmed that it got locked away. I've talked about the Sagittarian pivot and how it's your superpower, but I've also pointed out gently over the years that there are definitely ways that you could see that as a bit of a coping mechanism for, you know, damage that you have sustained up until this point. But I think over the passage of time, quite often we lose that connection to it. And it seems to me, Sagittarius, that you have literally just found it again. And there is something very empowered about the way that you want to take hold of it and shape your own foundation now. You know, the Four of Wands is a card of home. It's a card of security and stability. It's often a card of creating that for yourself, right? We've got here somebody making preparations for, you know, some sort of celebration, whether it's a party or a wedding. That's quite often what's shown up here. But it's the fundamental action of cheesing around in a safe space, right? And just given the ability to be yourself. The recognition that you didn't have that, and so you had to create something quite armor-plated to get out there into the world with. It feels like something you've just made a connection with that you didn't see before. And there's no other way of cutting it. It's like the distracting chopping wood and carrying water. Well, this is not supposed to be a distraction. It's supposed to be a focus, right? Has almost created enough space for you to see what you didn't want to look at before. And that's that your heart is very, very big, and there are some very, very tender emotions in there. Now, we just pull up some clarifiers for this Devil and the Queen of Cups. We have the Empress. I mean, that is the archetypal mother. And we also have the King of Wands, which strictly refers to Leo. And obviously we're reading for Leo season. But it's the active masculine expression of fire. So it isn't just what you experience, it is what you do and how much your emotions dictate what you do. But enslaved emotions that one does not allow oneself to feel, for example, will lead to a certain set of outcomes that are different to those who would allow themselves to be emotionally vulnerable or experience things on a level that you haven't before. I think it's quite interesting that the Page of Wands is also appearing at the bottom of the deck here, because this feels like all the hallmarks of a transformation, Sagittarius, but it's subtle. It's a really subtle process. It's a really strong process. And I'm not sure to what extent... Oh, what's underneath there? Ten of Cups, yeah. There seems to be some sort of confrontation with your own reality as it pertains to your early life, or your idea of what family should be. versus what it actually was, and versus what it may well be in front of you, actually. It's like the realization of the disconnect. And more than that, realization of the consequences of what was in terms of the lived reality that you have right now. You've got 2 pages which are definitely expanding your awareness, expanding the amount of information that you're allowing yourself to access, but also getting you ready to move forwards in a different way than you have done up until this point. Like I said, the Empress is the archetypal mother, she's sitting here underneath the devil. Now, I think it is unlikely that every single Sagittarian who is watching this video had a crappy childhood, but there's something about the emotional model that was set that in your current state of wisdom you can now see was not entirely correct for the person that you were when you were a child. And it's led to you doing things in a certain sort of way, almost like repetitively doing things in a certain sort of way. I think you're ready to put the burden down. This Triple Goddess is the only tarot deck that I own where the person in the Ten of Wands is actually depicted as realizing that they don't have to do it the way that they have always done it. It's one of the things that's always struck me as fascinating about the Ten of Wands. It is a card that represents a completion and end, but always we see these back-bending feats of strength going on. And I look at this and I go, well, that's very good, my guy, but did you need every single one of those? And instead of bending your back, could you not have just taken half of them and gone back to the house and asked for some help? I mean, you're doing it, and that's the point, but you have always done it. And I think sometimes we can end up in a place of shock when we realize just how hard we have worked when alternative ways of approaching the same situation existed. So it's like we've made life hard for ourselves because we did not perceive that there was any other way of doing it. And there's a real breakthrough energy here that says, do you know what? I'm actually not going to do it like that anymore. And getting ready for a new kind of experience. For me, the page is the step before the Knight of Wands. And the Knight of Wands is where the movement starts to occur. I've often drawn the correlation, like if you booked a holiday, everything that you do right up until the point where you leave your house to get in the taxi to go to the airport is the preserve then of the Page of Wands. Like booking the holiday, getting excited about the holiday, buying yourself a new outfit for the holiday, getting your suitcases out, buying your sun cream, like whatever it is. All of these things are Page of Wands activities because you're not actually going anywhere yet, but you are preparing for the journey. By the time we get to the Knight of Wands, then we're moving, we're doing something. And that in and of itself is quite interesting because the Knight of Wands is the Sagittarian card. So what we're seeing here is something very, very complex that is a restructuring of the Sagittarian experience that is coming from a place of, I know better than this. I know better than these things that I have been doing on repeat for my entire life, and I have only just noticed that there are certain things that I have been doing on repeat. And now I'm ready to start restructuring from the ground up. It's been tedious. It's been really, really hard work, but I really do feel like benefits will start to show themselves very, very clearly for you from this point on. Well, maybe let's not speak too fast because we've got Leo season to get through, right? Now, a lot of the good stuff that happens in Leo season is going to feed Sagittarius because they are linked by trine, right? So whatever's going on in one of the fire houses, it has an effect with the other two, so Aries and Sagittarius, right? And there is a lot of energy in Leo, not just for August, but this is a bit of a theme for the next at least a year and a half, right? So I feel like this is a really good time for all of these things to be happening, that it's almost just up to the wire when all of this big regenerative energy hits Leo, which is kicking out a lot of things that we don't need and trying to push in the things that are good with solar eclipses and stuff like that. Well, good. karmic, let's put it that way, which Sagittarius and Aries will get the benefit of. So let's have a look and see what's sticky about Leo season for Sagittarius. Bearing in mind about what I said about struggle and victory and courage and all that sort of thing. Right, so we've got the Ten of Cups straight back out again. We've got the Two of Cups. Holy shit. And we have the Star with the Hanged Man at the bottom of the deck. Now, Saggy, this is big. This is really big. Not one of these cards is of the fire element, which is really quite interesting. We've got water with the Ten of Cups, water with the Two of Cups. Then we've got air with the Star, and we've got water again with the Hanged Man. In terms of signs that represent Pisces, Cancer, Aquarius, and Pisces. But you will notice that there is the Hanged Man gives us an entirely new perspective. The Hanged Man voluntarily surrenders himself to an uncomfortable position to see things from a different perspective. And there's something very wise about that as an action anyway. It's interesting that it's a card that is representing a sign that you have a shared planetary rulership with, at least in ancient astrology, right, which is Jupiter himself, Pisces and Sagittarius being ruled by Jupiter. The wisdom that comes from looking at things from a different perspective. The thing is, all the chopping wood and carrying water that you've been doing has been necessary to get yourself to the place where you could notice that there was something that you could look at from a different perspective. And, because there's a kind of surrender required here, which is not really a word that you associate with any of the fire signs, this has probably been a long time coming. A really long time coming. Now, there is another word that we use very commonly when we're looking at the Hanged Man, and that is sacrifice. And I think we could certainly find a way to connect the idea of sacrifice to what you have noticed about the way that you burdened yourself with a particular way of doing things. It's almost like a sacrifice that was being performed over and over again that you didn't even realize that you were doing. Now, you can get deeper into that and say that there's possibly something to do with a sense of self here, of worthiness, of being lovable, even Sagittarius, that has been on the table in this one, or maybe not on the table, and that's kind of the point. That you've either had to work really, really hard for emotional connection, or else you have assumed that you weren't deserving of it, and then so shied away from it. It's kind of like there's something here that's ringing so loudly about the idea of rejection, Sag. It's almost like anything that you go into, you've already got your backpack ready just in case you need a boost out of the door. There's something revolutionary happening here. And to be clear, like, what I'm not saying is that every Sagittarian on the planet is solo and, not in a relationship and all that kind of thing. I'm sure there are very many happily married Sagittarians. What I'm saying is there is a layer here that has been unlocked. It seems to be coming to some sort of crescendo of realization now that there are softer emotional depths in you that you didn't even realize were there because you had lost connection with them, that you are now reconnecting to, and your mind is wearing like a computer, and all of a sudden you're putting lots and lots of things together. And whether it is relationships en masse with a lot of people, or whether it is the one-to-one, these are all getting overhauled because suddenly you have realized that you can create stronger foundations then actually the emotional model that you've been following has allowed. You know, I love this card here because the star card is often given to speak to either the future or our highest hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations, right? The star card comes after the tower, and the tower is a kind of detonation, right? It's many things, and actually it's a really rather good thing, but it's rarely experienced that way in the moment. Not uniformly bad, but in the moment, but it certainly is destabilizing, right? The star is almost like the return of hope, where you have the aggressive masculine energy of the tower. The star brings that feminine, softer stuff in, but there's something that the star specifically speaks to me about more, and I don't really hear other people talking about it. I never have done anyway, at least. But to me, when we talk about things like following our guiding star, an idiom. Is it an idiom or yeah, it's an idiom, right? What we're talking about in the abstract is a feeling of connection, right? So whether it's quite literally like the Magi in the Bible, right? They looked up, they saw a star, and they're like, all right, I'm going to follow that and find the little baby Jeebus. Or whether it's something a little bit more metaphorical than that. The trust in the connection between you and this great celestial body in the sky, whether this is metaphorical or otherwise, is so profound that you allow yourself to be led by it. And what is the Ten of Cups and the Two of Cups, if not connection? It's almost like, for the longest time, the deepest emotions that you felt, Sagittarius, had a quality of danger about them, always. Maybe you clung to them. Maybe you shied away from them. But it felt like that there was something that trying to feel my way around here, because this is incredibly complex. And I'm not surprised that these feelings exist within you, Sagittarius. But I can also to some extent feel the confusion as you're trying to work your way through them, right? This is hitting different, because it's one thing to intellectually know something, and it's another to feel it in your very fucking bones. And there's something here that you feel in your very fucking bones, and it is revolutionizing every single relationship that you have. Why? Because it's changing you, because you feel connected to something. Now, that's not to say that 2 months ago you didn't feel connected to something. It's saying that there is something that runs deeper and higher simultaneously now that you've seen something about yourself that is bringing a new reality into possibility. Gazing at the star, you feel like you're connected to something that you have been disconnected from for the longest time. Probably as long as you can remember. Tell me about this star, please. And the thing about that is that it changes the future. Yeah, look, so we've got the King of Swords now and the Four of Cups. And the Four of Cups is it's a card of isolation and loneliness. It's a card of feeling always on the wrong side of the window. Now we've got double Aquarius here, and the North Node is moving into Aquarius this season. You know, we're talking a lot about the South Node moving into Leo, but obviously we will also have the North Node moving into Aquarius, but we've also got Pluto there as well. And this kind of internal realization is very of the nature of Pluto. For me, the King of Swords is all about your decision-making processes and a sudden realization that they've never been as clear as you thought they were, particularly not when it came to your relations with other people. But quite simply, it looks like there's a whole new, deeper layer of Sagittarius that's just kind of erupting up to the surface, where to some extent this Four of Cups, although taught to you when you were young, it's that realization that you've perpetuated it. You've always kept yourself on the wrong side of the window, just in case. And this feels like it's completely changing everything. It's changing all the decisions in front of you. It's changing all the ways in even in terms of what you want from your life, because the waters are running clean now. I think it's maybe that. It's the extent to which the waters are running in you, Sagittarius. Who? Right, the era of hiding the deepest part of you is gone. You know, what started as a very deliberate act when you were very, very young has become an automatic act as you were older, and now you've noticed that it's happened and you can't unsee that part of yourself now. I think you're really ready to show yourself for who you are, Sag. I think you're ready to show the big emotions as well. What is the next step for Sagittarius, please? Four of Wands in reverse. Seven of Swords. And the World. Wow. I've got goosebumps. Page of Wands is at the bottom of the deck again, right? It's a reiteration of this idea that a new journey is starting here. And why is a new journey starting? Because there's a new version of you that's showing up here, Sag, right? It's still got all of the wisdom, it's still got all of the experiences, it's still got all of the things that you have done for decades, but now there's an emotional torrent, but it's not wild, it's not uncontrolled, it's not untamed, because you've got the discipline, you've got the mastery here of it. But what it's doing is allowing you to care, and care on a level that I'm not sure you thought you were capable of. The fear's gone. Or if it's not gone, at least you see it for what it is. And like I said before, you know, when it comes to bravery, you got a big old heart. All the fire signs do. It might manifest itself as like wanton stupidity sometimes. I say that as a fellow fire sign, like, how we do it. But this is huge, because you've realized that the comfort zone that you've made for yourself is not comfortable, actually. Now, it could be that for a small number of you, and I think it's very, very small, you may be leaving relationships that you've realized are not honoring who you are, because you didn't honor who you were. You may be leaving relationships that cannot act as a big enough container for the energy that you hold now. But I think it is more likely that for the overwhelming majority of you, you're quite literally torpedoing the way that you have done things, your foundation. And you're like, nah, No, 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 no. That's done. I'm going to build it differently now because I can. What the fuck? It scared the shit out of me. Hang on a second. I think something just flew into my window. Saggies. There's a very stunned looking finch sitting on the ground outside. So I think when I finish with you, I might go outside and just see if it needs any assistance. Anyway, you're ready to leave a comfort zone because it's too small for you. You're ready to do something bigger. I mean, this tells me that, this tells me that, and this world card here tells me that. There's like a surprise unleashing of forces that you didn't even realize that you had access to. And they're surprising you as much as they're surprising everyone around you. And it doesn't feel wrong. It feels righter than anything else. Like the world card is a card of an ending. We've seen that a few times during the course of this reading. It's like things need to be brought to completion. You are leaving that cycle and you are never coming back to it. Now, like I said, for a small number of you, this might mean leaving major relationships, seeing them for what they are. And what they are is not a match for you anymore. But for more of you, I feel like there is a much bigger, more active role that you are going to start playing, and you're bringing an awful lot of energy to the table, Sagittarius. There's something kind of the word that comes to mind is violent, but I realise that obviously there are some fairly obvious connotations to that, and they're not what I mean. The violence is in the surge, but it is not uncontrolled and it's not destructive. There's something violently creative that just seems to have emerged from God knows where. The emotional stuff. And it's like you've taken a handle on your past narrative and you can see, well, it's like fucking miles in every direction now. There's an elevation here. You are elevating. So rather than violent, I mean, but I'm trying to convey the kind of force that I can feel moving through you here. If we might use words like abrupt, significant, important, something like that. But violent really kind of gets it, you know. Leo season is like a sledgehammer to anything that's not working for you. No, done. Not doing that anymore. I am doing this. And, is there a quality of following your destiny about it? Oh, hell yes. But the future looks very different. And that's why there's this willingness to just close out this entire cycle and do it now, right? Do it like a Sag. This is not reactive. And I want to make that really, really clear. There's nothing, reactive and dramatic about this. It's just like a sudden bolt from the blue. And it changes everything. It changes the narrative behind you. It changes what you think is possible in front of you. And you better believe it's going to have an effect on your right here, right now, too. I feel like you're really swelling to take up the space that you always should have taken up, Sag. And you didn't even realize you were holding a bit of you back. This is wild. I love this. I'm actually like happy, clappy, excited for you. Right, so I'm going to leave it here. I am going to go and do the extended. I'm actually just going to go out and check on that bird first. Luckily for it landed in my newly fenced off part of where my ducks and chickens are going to go, so the dogs are not anywhere near it, so it is relatively safe. So if you'd like to come join me for the extended and check on the welfare of the bird, you are very welcome to do so. Like I said at the beginning, you can do that on Selfie or you can do that on Circle. I would be delighted to see you in either place. This feels monumental, Sagittarius, and I try very hard not to be, you know, big and dramatic and shouty and stuff in my readings. I do try and be quite understated, but this feels enormous to me. So I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.